What I'd like to do what I like to do with technology is kind of sad, but I like information, whether it's good or bad. And like things I remember, like when I was 20 years old, 15 years old, 30, 40, when I was even a kid, you know, before smartphones, before the internet, there was really no way, unless you had expensive satellite TV, there was, especially in the mid 80's, we didn't have, my uncle, he bought a satellite TV, but other than that, I knew of nobody that had satellite or cable TV. It was just too expensive, even if it existed. But every now and again you'd hear something on the even though it was the 70's and 80's when I grew up and become an adult, when I was a teenager, you heard bits and pieces, for example, of a murder or a missing person or missing people. The information was very limited. So you didn't really grasp it. You really didn't comprehend it. The good thing about that, it kept life more peaceful. 70's and 80's was very tranquil, very peaceful. But now, now let's fast forward to today, 2019. What I do with technology, such as YouTube, is now I'm actually in starvation mode for information. Just a little while ago, I was watching that Dark Minds of the I-70 killer, never caught. Happened in early 1990, April of 1992. And I remember when that happened. But when that happened in 1992, you didn't get much information on it. You really didn't. There was no easy access to information. There was no smartphones. So you heard bits and pieces of it. But now I can watch the video anytime I want. That's the good thing about technology today. I starve for the information. Well, no matter, it'll make you cry a little bit, And I remember the Highway of Tears, a little bit information. But now with all this technology, I get 100% informed, and it's sad. I remember WCPO, I think it was WCPO Channel 9, when the security guard was overtaken and when the whole studio became hostage. I think that was Channel 9. I remember that. It's just different things that I remember. I barely remember man landing on the moon. Barely remember it. Now, all these years later, I can watch it anytime I want. But I do a lot of old newsreels. I'm making up for it now. This technology helps me to make up and learn about everything. But there's always been crime, like the 1970s. You just didn't hear it. There's good in that. It makes life much more peaceful, much more tranquil. Life when I was growing up was a million because you didn't hear of the bad stuff like you do now. When I was growing up in the 1970s, life felt a million times more peaceful, a million times more peaceful than what it does now. Because we didn't have the information. We wouldn't bombarded with all this information. Now, all 45 years later, I get all I want. You know, and sometimes it makes you cry, and sometimes it makes you angry. You know, the criminal was never caught. But that's what I do. I like it and I don't, but I like information. So I often get on YouTube and I type in unsolved crimes, 1978, or what I remember a little bit of. I'll try to remember 1974. I was 11 years old. Let me see what I remember. So I'll go to YouTube and I'll type that in and get informed on it. Even though it's 40 something years old, I get informed now on it. You know, oh yeah, I'll say to myself as I'm watching the video, oh, the old newsreel, oh yes, I remember when that happened. But back in those days, information was very limited, extremely limited. But now, I got all the information I want through technology. That's what I do. And it just, just the little things. What I just barely remember, the little information, some of the things I remember very well. The space shuttle, Challenger. I seen it explode on live television, 1986. So, I watched that again. Anything I missed. Because it was such a shock then that you have to listen to the news because you was such a shock that it exploded. But now the shock is wore off, so I pay more attention to the old newsreels. Technology can bring in a sad world. I love technology. I hunger for technology. But yet, when you watch them old newsreels of different crimes, it's just so sad. But I hate to be left in the dark. Unsolved, missing people, unsolved crimes. Like I said, there's always been, even when I grew up, there was crimes. There was bad stuff. You just didn't hear it. But now I can handle it. I'm not a kid no more. I can handle it now. I wouldn't want my kid, if I had a kid, I wouldn't want my kid with all this information today. It'd be too much for him. It really would. That's why I don't see how children today, 24-hour CNN news. Now you're saying to yourself, well, Greg, we ain't got it on all the time. Well, it's true. Maybe true. But it's still on your television. I wouldn't want CNN. If I had a kid living at home, I would never have CNN 24-hour. No. I want to protect my kids. Or kid. I would read it in private. I don't know. A kid growing up today, they're getting too much information. It would be different if the world wasn't so bad. Then there's the beautiful part of it. I've been to Wyoming, I've been to Colorado, and in 4K, I can look at the mountains again, the beautiful world we live in. But yet, there's always something bad going on. And it's hard to watch that. It's hard for me to go to YouTube, type in something that I remember from the 70's, 80's, 90's, even today. But the past, especially the past, it's very difficult for me to type in, I remember that. And I'll type in the best way I know how, and it'll pop up. Whatever the crime was. And I'll click on that video, and I'll get the information. I mean, the the crime was 40 years ago, 45 years ago, and I remember that happening, but I never did get the whole story on it. But technology allows me to see, to watch, to hear the whole story. And some of it's very very tragic. And some of it's kind of good. Maybe the medicine invented, the new drug, or the drug that was invented 40 years ago. But, technology is really helping me keep up.